Okay, we're live and direct. There we go. Live and direct. And it's a new day. Lots of work to do. So, where were we yesterday? We were starting to make shape of this. Does that look like what I was working on yesterday? Yeah, there was a ball there. There's a ball over there. There's a ball over there. I wanted to say this guy was standing on something. So for the moment, it looks like it's standing on that. So I might do just start connecting putting some provisional lines in there. Yeah, it's much better. I'm not in bed anymore, for example. I'm out of bed, so it feels a lot better. Yeah. So this is kind of the continuum. Managed to get out of bed and do what I needed to do. Get some work done. So I've connected that to that. So I wanted him to be standing on something. As you can see, this foot is obviously placed on something. So I'm gonna try and turn this into like a pyramidical, I think that's how you say it, pyramidical shape, or pyramidal shape. Like bringing a line down from there to there. And then there'd be a line. Well, it's not complete. And then there's a line going from, let's say, I could do one of my yellow lines again, but I'm not going to. And it would, I guess, go to like this point over here where I've just drawn. So I'll draw a line going down. I think I'm very quickly going to get overloaded with the amount of videos that I've got on this particular site. Let me see, what is this? Super glue. looks a bit weird what I'm doing. I'm sure you think that. I'd be very surprised if you didn't think that. Obviously, the accent's gone. Okay, that's the first thing to notice. The accent's disappeared for a few hours. He'll probably be back at some point. He always comes back, keeps on coming back around. I think it's psychological. It's I won't go into it. But the accent keeps on coming back around. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, yeah. No. The sun shining on my face, which makes me look a little bit weird, I think. The sun, well, it's not really the sun, it's like a grey sky shining on my face. So I've got a grey light reflecting onto my face. But yeah, what was I talking about? I was talking about this particular, it looks like a pedestal. So I guess what we're trying to work on here is the idea that these guys are basically, and I like the way his shoe is bent here, because if you look at his shoe from that angle, I'll draw a yellow line around the place where I mean it to go, or maybe the yellow line is extraneous here, but there has to be some kind of a teaching element. A yellow line where I think the edge of his shoe could be, because the edge of his shoe could be here, or the edge of his shoe could be like here, and I think it's better here if it looks like his foot is kind of curved around a particular object. And even if I'm not making a good sound, it's a good workout for the lips. The lips, the teeth, the tip of the tongue. Lots of food in town. Had a lot of food. Lots of food. I would say too much food. I would be inclined to say that it was too much. I don't feel bloated particularly, but I do feel pretty greasy. So I would say that it was too much. So I'm just going to tighten up my belt. All that's missing for this video is my cup of coffee. But a cup of coffee's got to make me feel even more bloated if I wasn't bloated in the first place. It's going to make me feel bloated, I should say, rather than even more bloated. I don't have to be a little bit bloated to feel more bloated, but I do feel a bit bloated. Sorry for blindsiding you, but it's just one of those things. Room's a little bit of a tip right now, a little bit of a mess, but yeah. So as you can see, his foot is kind of curved round. So one foot's on a flat surface, and the other foot is on a rounded surface. So I'm going to go in with a green line, and I'm going to add maybe 2 or 3 green lines to indicate, and you could probably guess the proximity where they're going to be. And if you did guess, then it shows there's some kind of correlation between what's going on in my brain and what's going on in your brain, in your observation brain. That is, if you have the time and space to watch what I'm doing. Yeah, so a correlation here. So 3 lines just to basically show where his other foot is placed, or what is the nature of the pedestal that his other foot is on. So I'll draw the extremity of that pedestal first. I think it would follow this black line here that's already in place. So I'm going to follow that. Obviously I'm going to play a note as well, or try to play a note because it is day. Oh yeah, I forgot to say, now have two cornets. There's the one that was playing yesterday, late last night. It's got the piece on it. I'm waiting for this one, for the technology to get in for this one so that I can start using this one as well. So I'll be using this one. It's kind of a shame to see it more mashed up like that, but when I start making, if I get the chance, I'd like to make my own brand of cornets, and they'd have a flat top like that. They'd have a built-in stylus. That's where I'll begin, I think, before I go all electronic. But it's nice to be in a chair rather than sitting in your bed, because when you're in the bed and your legs are all stretched out, your legs can get quite cramped. So there's the first green line, okay? There's the first green line, which shows where his foot is connecting to. And then I should draw a green line in the middle of that. In fact, I've got the green lines basically. Just follow these black lines here. Doesn't matter if it's kind of messy. The idea seems to be here that, you know, it doesn't matter if it's messy. It's just more that it's going towards something. It's starting to get a shape. Because like I said yesterday, or in the previous video, it makes sense to have as many lines on there. You want it to almost look like a wireframe before you start rendering, doing the top layer. And that's why I said it needs a lot of work, in my opinion. In my opinion, I need a lot of work on rendering these things. But already you have this suggestion of shadow here, but I want it to be properly rendered before I'm finished with that. So I would like it if there was some kind of connection between this area here, like this wheel here, and this wheel at the top. I'm still not sure how it would do it, but I feel like it has something to do with connecting this wheel to this wheel and connecting this wheel to this wheel. So maybe that would be it, the first thing to block in. This, what I use these wheels for, is to basically get a feeling for what's going on. So I'll go in with another green line here. And I guess it sounds a little bit like a lightsaber or something like that, or a laser being burning through some kind of piece of wood or something, or some kind of piece of metal. Just doing that. I did eat a lot of food, so I'm wearing my belt now. I've girded up my loins, man. Whacked on my belt just to tighten it all. Cause I find when I just leave, when I'm feeling a little bit bloated and I just leave my belly just hanging there, I add weight. But when I put a belt on, I don't add weight. It's like the belt exercises you and forces me to work on a smaller surface area. So it stays in a smaller surface area rather than just expanding and expanding like a balloon. That's why I prefer. That works for me. So if you're just stumbling across this video, please like and subscribe to the channel. There's plenty more content coming. I'm just basically going to be making these videos as often as I can. I just make as many of these videos as it makes sense to make. Because like I said, it's about accountability. There's a YouTuber, Mary Spender, who brought this to my attention about this idea of accountability as an artist. She's a musician, she's a guitarist and a singer and songwriter. But she, British girl, and she brought it to my attention that, by making videos, you force yourself into a position where you, even if your audience is 2 people or 3 people, it's more than just you sitting there in your room, on your own clock. For one thing, you take less toilet trips, you can make less cups of tea, you can have less cereal, you can do a lot less things. I'm just going to put a wheel in here. I've got super glue all over my fingers because I had to super glue some of these valves. Just to stop. About 20 minutes after I bought the first Cornet, one of the valve caps fell off. Luckily I was by an escalator, so it fell onto the escalator, and the escalator went up to the top and it stopped at the top and just revolved there at the top. If I would have been walking in the street and I hadn't seen where it fell, I would have just gone out there, bought a brand new Cornet and lost the valve cap. So I've super glued them in place now. Which is good. I think today I've had 2 burgers. I've had 2 beef burgers, one double cheeseburger, 1 Whopper from Burger King. I've had 1 pastrami sandwich, with delicious pastrami sandwich actually, with sourdough bread and like arugula and all of that sort of stuff, and coleslaw and Swiss cheese. What else? 1 delicious, all the foods have been very good today. Really well, very fresh, very well made. But yeah, I am slowing down here. So yeah, as you can see, there's a potential object here. I mean, what I'm looking at here, what just caught my eye just there, was literally this blue thing here. I feel like it could slide laterally, like it could move in that orientation. Like if it was to be a thing, like obviously this is some kind of quantum computer. That's the brain of the computer with this kind of Masonic or Star of David looking, Scissor Sisters looking thing. And it's kind of like a world engine, a world map. Basically, these guys are traveling through space at the beginning of the story. They're traveling from Earth. They launch off from Earth. And the first story follows a journey of this big, massive space colony. It's the year 6000 AD. The journey of this big, massive space colony to Proxima C. And the journey, the adventure that they have. These 3 entrepreneurs who famously go on board their ships for the first time, and their ships are really extravagant, whereas everything else is like the ISS. These guys have like gone and, well, they basically started a movement with like really cool ships. So it's basically like when we went from having ships like you have like in Interstellar, very basic ships like, that have parts like this, like you can see in the background there, that look, they're basically made of loads of component parts. to having like super fast ships that look like race cars. And these guys were at the forefront of that. And this is about what happens, the journey that they go on, and the adversities that they face. And yeah, as I mentioned in one of the earlier videos, they end up in a really tricky situation when they fall into a black hole, but they survive, as far as we know, as far as I can tell. But it's about what happens to a couple of the characters and how they're split apart. Well, it's a space colony. There's lots of people on this ship, and their ships are really extravagant. For example, the reason why I've got all these trumpets and stuff around is because I had the idea that the ships were going to be controlled by trumpet. So to play the thing, to direct the ship, you have a crew of people, and they basically do everything with 3 keys like this, you know. With everything like that, they basically do everything like that. It's the middle of the day, and I don't think there's anyone in. That's the only reason why I'm playing that loudly. Otherwise, I wouldn't dare. So, I guess what I'm saying is that's the brain of the navigation computer. So they're navigating. They're basically going through a wormhole. So this thing is basically like a mechanized wormhole. So whoever's done this has terraformed this wormhole. So this thing you see in the background is like a world engine or a power source that is basically stabilizing the wormhole at the point where it is back there. It's like a big massive snake stretching back, as you can see, and it's going to stretch all the way back to, I guess, somewhere around here would be the place where it maxes out, and that's also where the writing goes to. So I don't think the background is actually going to remain green. It's probably we're gonna want to make it look a little bit more like space, but it should look like hyperspace. But I want my hyperspace to look different than all the hyperspace that you typically see. In all of the literature that is come out, Star Wars, Star Trek. So yeah, like I say, this thing here, we're looking at it in a stationary position, but this thing here, these train tracks, those 2 lines, those 2 parallel lines here, I want it to move in that orientation. So it would be like something that would move over there. It would carry some kind of signal. It's a quantum computer, so it has moving parts. It's not like a digital computer. It's like an analog quantum computer, which is the brain of this ship. Like I said, their way of doing things is really advanced and really like flamboyant. And it's about how these guys learn humility. They go through an experience and they're basically told to settle down, calm down. That's the whole story of this first part of the story. And then it's about basically how people who have settled down and become austere are told speed up. Now it's always about balance. I think that's the whole theme for this idea of the last Medici. And obviously there's a theme of who is the last Medici. What does the last Medici mean? You know, who is the last Medici? The Medicis were a family in the Renaissance. They were basically benefactors, art benefactors, society benefactors, but mainly they were bankers. They facilitated big moves. So what would the last Medici be responsible for? Is either the last Medici the one who's telling them stay down, speed up, or is it more like God who's saying slow down, speed up, or is it somewhere in between, an AI or something like that? So I'm yet to find out everything that I want to know about the story, but I feel like it would move along there. That's what I'm saying. So the question is, would there not be, if that was the case, I feel like there would be a kind of, I want to put a wheel here at the bottom of this thing here to basically act as a pin, which would basically thread it into this. So you have a left side of the track and you have a right side of the track. So I feel like I'd want to go like this. Sounds really tiring, doesn't it? Just 1 second. I just need to put something together here. I've just realised that I don't have on the device that I'm using to upload my videos. I don't have a Twitter. I don't have Twitter on that device. So without Twitter, it's very difficult for me to tell people. It's very difficult for me to tell people what I'm doing and to come and support my videos, even though they rarely do. Now and again in the past, I've had people I've had people comment on my videos and stuff like that. I rarely get followers, but somehow I've gone from having no followers to having 5 followers. So something is moving, and it's about how much you upload as well. I do believe that it has something to do with that. So just bear with me 1 second. I don't know what you're talking about. YouTube. Yeah, that was a long hiatus, I know, but I can share that to Twitter. We'll put some hashtags on this thing. It's got nothing to do with what I'm talking about. So, let's continue watching this. Yeah, so just going back to this again. So, yeah, that thing would go across there. But obviously, this is what I've discovered is that there's a couple of ways for me to get good artwork. The first is to use reference images. But I always feel like that's cheating, using reference images. the second way for me is for me to talk. It's for me to talk through what I'm doing. When I talk through what I'm doing, I get out of my head and I become more artistically inclined. And when I get into that frame of mind, things start to happen. So, for example, I'm in that frame of mind now. I'm talking, and look what happens. I've recognized that I need another line somewhere along here. So I'm like, okay, I'll go with a red. I'll get a red on there. Get a red line. And I'll say, okay, I'll draw a red line from here, from that yellow circle down to, let's say, a red circle down here. So I draw it the next point, because it's kind of like it's threading the needle. So as this shuttle is like a weaver's beam, as this shuttle moves across there, this thing would move across as well. This pin would move across. So we're going to draw some kind of trench, I suppose you could say. And that trench is going to represent the place, the line that the weaver's beam moves along. It's not a weaver's beam, I don't know what to call it, basically. That's why I call myself the ad hoc engineer, because I don't have all the terminology. I never trained as an engineer. I just like drawing pictures and telling stories. So I'll draw a line across there, and obviously I'll play a note at the same time. I'm not sure what note that is, but we do have what note I'm going to play, but we do have a piano here. See, I'm still learning this instrument. I haven't been playing for very long, but as I've said, the best way to learn is to play quietly. It's got a little bit of a kink in it, that line. So I'm going to try and correct that kink with an orange, I guess. An orange line. Fire! So we'll go across there, basically. I guess I'm going to go in there with a darker colour, because I want to see what I'm doing. Let's go across horizontally is the best way, I guess, to do this. Now, the confusing thing about this is that I guess it depends. You've got these three wheels here, these three circles, and I'm going to join them up before I say what I was going to say. In fact, I might as well say what I was going to say first. I've noticed something about these guys here. I've noticed that, to make sense of what they're doing there, I probably want to think in terms of these things collapsing. So there's a part of the, obviously you've got on the train track, you've got things that stay rigid, or on a futuristic train track, a train track that bends, for example, you've got a part that would stay rigid, like the outer edge might stay rigid, but there might be something in the middle that collapses. Even on a train that you have the locomotive thing going around, you have the parts that collapse. You have some parts that you have that joint that connects to the wheel, which basically goes, it moves, it's variable, but you have the actual frame which runs lateral to the wheel, which runs level, so it moves like that, and it kind of does that. I think you know what I'm talking about. In old locomotives, these steam engines, and it's the same with cars and all of that sort of stuff. You have parts that move and you have parts that are stationary. And I like this idea that on this particular machine, they have, as you can see, that looks, it's kind of like a worm, and there's a kind of wormy kind of feel to what's going on over here, almost like a wormy kind of dragon looking thing, just vomiting up all this stuff. Doesn't look great at the moment, but I really want it to look spectacular. So if I was to, for example, join this wheel to this wheel, which I can do right now, that's probably driving you crazy, but for me, it's the cure for my ADHD, man, and for my OCD, and for my schizoaffective disorder. It's the cure for a lot of things. It's just helping me to feel like I've got my hands full, so I don't need to do too much else. It's the answer to a lot of my problems, man. Trust me. So I hope you don't mind observing this. I do need to check the time. One thing about my videos compared to others is that you see where they begin and where they end, which is really, really low budget, but at present I'm not repenting of that because it's beneficial to me. So we've drawn a line between here and there. Like I said, I want there to be like a bendy thing, like a wormy kind of thing, that whereas this shuttle moves on the outside, I'm not going to animate this, but like you've got this arm here, you've got this armature here, which we could extend further. So we could just extend this black line here. You might hear, just from hearing my voice, it's slightly pitched at a mid to high range. I don't have a deep voice. I look like I should have a deep voice, but I don't have a deep voice. I'm not the biggest guy. I'm under 6 foot. So people under 6 foot, they don't always have the deepest voices. But that's why I like speaking with practicing my American dialect. I told you I used to be an actor. I like practicing my American dialect because it does something to my voice. It makes it less croaky. But yeah, it's not perfect. There's a lot of mistakes that I make. I'm always making mistakes in my American dialect, which is one reason why I didn't stick at what I was doing with the acting. I decided to come and start and try and start a career as an artist instead, which is what I'm doing now. And what all this is about. And now I'm not even doing that. I'm playing the trumpet whilst drawing, which is weird to some people. But not many people are doing this. In fact, I reckon very few people. I might be one of the few people in the world with this particular idea. But I just got sick of sitting there and saying, oh, now I'm going to play trumpet, picking up my trumpet, playing that for a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to do some artwork, picking up my pencil, doing that. I just didn't like that. Like I said, ADHD, schizoaffective disorder, they leave you wanting cohesion. And that's what this is all about. Trying to find cohesion, trying to find balance, trying to find inspiration, from the amalgamation of crafts, rather than from the disparate disadvantage of diverse dilemmas, let's say. So I'm going to extend this dark line. I should mention that I haven't been diagnosed as having ADHD or OCD. These are just things that has come to my attention, that the way I've been behaving has made me think, or maybe I've got obsessive compulsive disorder, or maybe I've got an attention deficit, which is why I've had to start making things look a little bit more attractive and feel a little bit more Zionistic, for want of a better word. So I'm just going to extend this line across here, then I'm going to finish what I was saying. Yeah, like basically what I was saying is that I want a bendy part. I want something to bend, and then I want something rigid on the outside. But the bendy part needs to look significantly, it needs to look like it bends without me having to animate it. So I guess that this picture here is actually taken from the story. It's like a snapshot. Whereas sometimes the front cover of a game design document, or the front cover of a comic book, of a graphic novel or a comic book, you'll get an abstract picture. This is not trying to be abstract. The fact that it is, the abstract quality is in the fact of what it is in the fact that it's a real picture from the actual story, saying the story is abstract. So I don't need to abstractify something and make it all pared down and simplistic. I want to talk, and as I say, I'm figuring out the story as I go along. So this is my way of basically learning about the story and learning about the characters, is to basically throw as much information at the page as I possibly can and say, oh, that's what's going on here. I don't have names for these characters. I know a couple of the names, but we'll get to that later on. My idea is to basically work it out as I go along. So I'm just going to keep on extending this line. You need to try our pizza cones. So save some money today as well. I managed to save a little bit of money in that special place. I don't really save money in the bank anymore because it's too easy to retrieve it. I don't even save money in my piggy bank anymore because it's too easy to retrieve it. I'm going to save money in a place where it's very difficult for me to get my hands on that money. Because if I can touch the money, or if I can get out the money, if it's just sitting in my savings account, that money will get spent. If it's not sitting in my savings account, it's sitting in a safe place that is hard for me to reach, and it's a big effort and an expense for me to get out the money, then it probably won't get lost. So I managed to save some money, and I'll get some more saved up later on in the week. But yeah, we've got that straight bit going along there. As I said in the last video, the line that I want to follow for the outside of this platform is very specific. It's that basically, you can probably see what I'm talking about. It's this line here that goes along there, across there, down there, across there, up there, across there, and up there. So this area here wouldn't really be is they're kind of standing on a platform. I mean, all in all, it looks a little bit like the housing of a stone, or it looks a little bit like some kind of Egyptian, like that thing from Indiana Jones where he has that sundial, which I think I don't know if it's not the Last Crusade. It's the first one, the temple, not the Temple of Doom, the one before the Temple of Doom, where he's got that symbol, that mirror glass that he uses to find out where the treasure is hidden in the first one, the first Indiana Jones. And the light shines through the thing, and then it shines off the wall, and it shines through something else. And it basically reveals, oh, that's where this hidden cave is. That's what it reminds me of a little bit. It also looks like a little bit of a gemstone or something like that. So, yeah, but I do want to isolate the portion that they're standing on as being some kind of, perhaps it's a floating deck. But if it is a floating deck, and that line is going down there, what are these platforms? Is this portion of the platform truly connected to that portion of the pedestal? I don't think it should be. So I'm going to draw a green orb. I'm going to put a green orb in place to basically differentiate a differentiation engine between the platform, the platform that his left foot is standing on, this guy on the left, that his left foot is standing on, his left foot from our point of view, obviously, his left foot from his point of view. I'm going to draw that, a little circle. I think I'm going to have to start naming these Archive 1, Archive 2, because I think that's the best way to deal with the problem of people not really being interested in watching the backlog of your videos. Because if I have somebody who subscribes, or if I manage to get 250,000 subscribers, say, the 250th subscriber is probably never going to see this video. Just because why would he go back over all the content when he could quite happily just start from where it is and work forward? So if I start naming them Archive 1, Archive 2, Archive this, then it becomes like looking at an archive. So that's another one of my ad hoc ideas, is to actually start archiving it properly so that it can be registered. But the reason why I put that green circle there is because I don't feel like this, like as we can see, there's 2 pins here. There's a pin there which is connected to, as we show, that place there. And there's a pin here which is connected to this weird looking kind of toenail or pig's foot looking thing. So I just draw a circle around a pig's foot. This is a revelation, man. This thing here, this thing is so cool. This is the coolest pen in the world. It's not the most dexterous, it's not the most quickest pen, but that's not what this is about. It's not about speed, it's about specificity. And you get speed from specificity, so you'd rather be the tortoise than the hare, because the tortoise wins the race. I think I'm going to offset this with a dark blue inner circle. So there's two pins there. There's a pin there, and presumably, what's going on here is this pin will slide over in that direction, and this pin will slide over in that direction. And when they meet somewhere in the middle, so they will collide somewhere. Boom! That one will go that way. That one will go that way. Obviously, they would meet somewhere. They wouldn't smash into each other, but as they become closer to each other, presumably there's some kind of message that's being fed by quantum receptors or quantum transistors that are lined all along the side. I'm going to put quantum transistors all along the side of both of these pins. Okay? And as they come close to each other, they send a message to one another which tells you something about location. So let's say that these two pins in specific, we can give them a couple of things that they do, you know. This is how you have to think if you're going to be able to deliver a game. If you can do a comic book without thinking too hard about what each of the things does, but when it's a game, everything needs to work. If it doesn't work, people will notice. When you look at those games like Cyberpunk and all of that, I haven't played Cyberpunk, but I've seen enough of it to know that the technology that they have on that game, all the interfaces would work in real life. All they would need to do would be to wire it the right way or to have the right kind of hologram. Halo the same way. All of those games, they work. The things work. So quantum transistors or whatever. So for example, we could say that the first thing that these two pins are trying to do is tell this world engine or tell this navigation engine about this particular person's song, heart. Let's say, for want of a better word, we use the word heart song. So this guy has a song, this guy has a song, and this guy has a song. And their combined songs fly this particular ship or this particular engine. And let's say that I've got the idea now that the ship that they're traveling on doesn't look like this, but there is an interface, which is a holographic interface, which they have to step into. They put aside their instruments. As you can see, this guy has an instrument here, or he has, as you can see, that's music. That's like a musical notation, okay? So he's got a holograph in his hand, so he's playing a certain song. And basically, these pins here on his side are communicating with this ball, with this foot, with his foot is standing on this particular thing. I'm going to do a dark line here. I'm going to do a line coming down here. I'm going to play a note if I can. So, yeah, everything has to work. So basically, these pins are basically telling this brain here something about. So the brain is basically the reason why this brain has this kind of map at it. This is the destination, maybe. One of them is one of the wheels represents a destination, and it says, "Oh, that's where we're headed for this particular world, with this particular kind of groove and this particular kind of look." And then one of them represents where they are. But this is basically saying, okay, because they're in a wormhole, they have real numbers and they have imaginary numbers. And both of these real numbers and these imaginary numbers tell in the same way that when you're asleep, you have real numbers and imaginary numbers. When you're dreaming, you have real numbers which tell you are sleeping on a bed in a room, which is why you don't become completely immersed in your dream. There's always a part of you when you're flying, for example, in your dream, it doesn't feel like your actually whole body is flying through the dream. At least that's not how it works for me. There's always a part of me which is aware that I am dreaming, okay? There's always a part of me that is aware that I am being propelled through space, that I am being flown. You know, it's not how it would be if you were dead, for example, and you had angel's wings and you were flying around and you were experiencing it like you experienced this world. You have to protect your heart, you know? So your mind is protected. There's a layer of protection there in your dream. So you have real numbers and imaginary numbers in the same way you have real numbers and imaginary numbers telling you, okay, we're at this certain portion in space, but at the same time as if you're traveling at faster than light, there's the uncertainty principle. You're in one place, but you're also in no place. It's the quantum principle. I'm not exactly sure. I'll bypass some of these ideas, but basically to do something like this, you have to create pseudoscience. That's what it is. It's pseudoscience. You create pseudo means it's not real. It's a science to guard science. It's a science to promote a scientific reasoning, or it's a science to promote a scientific understanding or a scientific apprehension. You know, so you have real numbers and imaginary numbers. I know enough to know that. To say, okay, maybe one of the transistors on here represents, or 14 of the transistors on here represent real numbers, and 14 of the transistors on there represent imaginary numbers, and they're switching on and off in a binary transistory allocation, let's say. So the song he's playing, this guy is playing a song. We could say, okay, he seems to have his hands up like that. He seems to be holding something like a bar, and we've drawn this light beam going across here. So he seems to be holding some kind of bar, which is an instrument. And I would say it would be a holographic instrument, similar to this guy's holographic instrument, which would represent music as well. And I might actually represent it as the traditional staff. His song would basically say we were at, let's say, the coordinates AB4T2 at 5 million nanoseconds ago, and now we're at AAC45, you know? So he's talking about this thing is basically registering their movement through space, and is actually allowing them to locate themselves in space. Because the whole thing about faster than light travel is the idea that if you lose yourself, it's over. You know, there is the idea that you're traveling faster than light, so you have to be relative to something. You can't just switch off. If you just switched off, you know, the spaceship would disappear and it would never reappear again. It's the same with teleportation. You know, the spaceship has to remain in space. So there has to be some kind of binary function, whereas one thing is switched off, another thing is switched on. So in this sense, it's real numbers versus imaginary numbers. That's how I would think of it anyway. I don't want to go too deep into it, but I would say that, yeah, how would these transistors look? You know, so already it seems like I've got the idea here, some transistors. I'd like it if they looked just like normal transistors, like I'd like it if they looked like normal transistors, basically. But yeah, I will just basically, because there needs to be a little element of mystery, I'll just draw some kind of shape here along the side here. And I'm still going to push that idea of saying, you know, I would love there to be an app where I could basically play the trumpet from a distance. I wouldn't need this thing. I could play the trumpet and know for certain that by playing certain notes, if I played them with a degree of accuracy and at a certain volume, or with a certain intensity or a certain velocity, that it would create an effect on here. I'm still getting there, but you have to fake it till you make it in a certain sense with something like this, because I don't think I'll be the person to ever write that program. I just don't want to spend that much time learning how to code. Even though I love reading coding books and learning about all the different things that go into a coding, the best coding languages, programming languages, I don't think I'd be the best programmer. I don't think it's who I am. You don't have to be able to do everything necessarily. You just have to be able to do a few things well. One of the things I do well is talk, so I hope you're enjoying the video. And I will just check the time. Yeah, it's just 1 hour just there. So that's basically what I'll say. So these are transistors, and they're dealing with real numbers and imaginary numbers. And I'm going to go for a walk and have a cup of coffee. And I guess I'll come back at a later point in the video, or come back at not a later point in the video, I'll come back later on and make another video at some point. So yeah, I'm just going to just straighten this out a little bit and put a line here. So we know that about transistors, but if I would have just been sitting there, I could have sat there for 20 minutes, 50 minutes without talking. I would have never got to the point of talking about real numbers and imaginary numbers. And that's something to bear in mind if you're one of these people who is a very silent artist and you're just all about concentration. And if you're doing still life, that's fine. But if you're trying to create and you're trying to invent, you need some kind of sounding board. I would recommend that to anyone. You need a kind of sounding board to basically get you into the frame of mind where you're basically going to reflect on something. And the best way to get your ideas clear is by either writing them down. I would recommend speaking the ideas if you haven't got a very bad speech impediment. Speaking the ideas, sharing them. Don't be too covetous over your ideas. They're God-given. Many of your ideas are God-given. So be proud of your ideas and develop them. Share, Yeah, so that's how I'm going to leave it there. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. Like, subscribe, share with a friend. I know it's not the most conventional platform, but I really hope you are enjoying what I'm laying down anyway. All right, have a nice day. God bless.